Sorry. Last time we looked at React Element and Virtual DOM. This time we will look at the JXX syntax that makes it easier to make React elements. JXX is short for JavaScript XML. You can understand it as an extension to JavaScript grammar. Using JSX, we can make the React element that we created using a create element function in a simpler expression. Organizing this element with this simple expression is essential when creating a component with React. Therefore, when creating a React component, you must know the syntax of JSX. This JSX grammar is not difficult. If you know these few rules, you can use it very easily. This JSX syntax is the code that can be used like an HTML tag. First of all, I'd like to explain what JSX is like with the code. Now, if you look at the code in the below part of PowerPoint, you can see we wrote the code to create an element using function called react.createElement that we did it last time. In the same way, it is an h1 tag that we print the text hello world in the form of an HTML h1 tag, and it has property props, so the class name has three properties like a heading. But once again, this method called createElement has the three parameters. First parameter is the type, and the second one, the property, is called props. And the last but the least, the third one is we call children. So some elements can have their own children, which is like the elements they contain. In other words, if there's an element called div, this div can have various other elements such as p tag or h1 tag. So those things are passed as a third parameter. Then creating an element using a create element function like this is difficult in the part of writing like this. When actually writing the code, it is difficult to create an element with a complex structure when writing in this form. It means that it can be changed like this if you use JSX. As you can see from the top, the change of this create element shown below using the JSX syntax is this content as you see above. As you can see, it is like the h1 HTML tag. Open the h1 bracket, then h1. Put the prop before the bracket ends in the middle, then hello world, and put the closing bracket with the h1 in it. JXX is written in this form. It is just like an HTML tag. Then this kind of code we have written in JXX syntax goes through the transcompile process. What I'm saying is that the code that we written in this form goes through transcompile and change it to this way again. It is the same JavaScript code, but it changes it again into the JavaScript code. Now, change it like this. This is called the transcompile process. The tool used in this process is a library called Babel. So the JSX code we wrote goes through a transcompile process through a transcompiler, and it is again produced as a JavaScript code. The browser reads the JavaScript code and executes it. This process goes through, but there is one thing to be picked up from here. The React we are going to use is a library written in JavaScript. However, there are versions of JavaScript, and the standards for that version may be different. The previous most used JavaScript version is ES5. However, currently, ES6 version is mainly used in ES5 standards. So, in ES5, keywords such as let, const, or class do not exist. This is the code from ES6. It is also called ECMA script 6. So it's either called ECMA script 6 or 2015. React implements code based on ECMA script 6. However, certain browsers may not support ECMA script 6 yet. So most browsers also support up to ECMA script 5, but certain browsers or specific versions may not support ECMA script 6. So the process of compiling the React code that we work on with EX6 back to ES5, the process is called transcompiling. Therefore, we will write the code using ECMA script 6 standard JSX grammar. We need to convert this into JavaScript based on ECMA script 5 through a transcompiler tool called Babel. This task were originally done by using a JavaScript builder tool called Webpack. When the code we wrote is bundling, when it goes out to a destination, it goes through Babel. For example, ES6 changed to ES5 and changed JXX to ES5. However, because the settings can be a bit complicated, it is necessary to learn about Webpack. So it is the CRA that we use to make it easier to do those parts. So if we use the CLI tool made by Facebook called CRA, we create this project in the form of having basic settings even if we do not separate Webpack. Therefore, you can understand for now that the code written in this way in JXX syntax is converted into such code through transcompilation at the same time of actual execution. Now, using JXX like this, we can organize elements more conveniently as if we were using HTML kegs instead of create element functions in React. Now this part is important because JXX is a part that will be used a lot in the future. It is a grammar that you can get used to as you use it. Then let's take a closer look at JXX while looking at the contents of the next textbook. There are a few things to be aware of when using JXX grammar. The first part you will see is case sensitive. There will be text provided in HTML by default. There will be components that will make in the future. Then the way to distinguish the two is whether the first letter of the word that starts the tag is uppercase or lowercase. So the React component we made is written in Pascal case. Basic HTML elements are made in lowercase. You can look at it as an example here. H2, input, and a tag. But when we create the components, we will use a capital letter list button. In other words, when this compilation process goes through, text written in lowercase are basically recognized as HTML elements. Elements we create, like when we create a list or button, when it is React component we created, we have to write Pascal case like this. If you do this button, a tag written in JXX syntax is considered as a button of an HTML element. In that case, we get an error when we give some attribute because it may not be in the default HTML element. That's the first part that you should be aware of when applying JSX grammar. Now, there are cases where you need to write JavaScript code within JSX syntax. In that case, you have to write the code inside the curly braces. If you see on the right, you put the JSX grammar inside the curly brace. At that time, if you look here, it's a span tag like this. This is written in JSX syntax, but if you look at the top line, it is general JavaScript code. So when writing JavaScript code inside the JSX grammar, you can understand that you can write JavaScript code inside the curly braces. There is also one thing that we use in ECMA script 6 for keywords like class or for that basically use HTML. For example, we assign a class to the HTML element. Whether you apply a style or use the keyword class as a selector, the keyword is used as a keyword in CMA 6 for JavaScript. So you shouldn't just use a class as class. You have to use it as class name. That part will be explained once more when we use the keyword class name directly while specifying the attribute. Now, I'm going to write a simple JSX code. You don't have to follow along. Just see and understand how the difference between the code when we use JSX and when we don't use it. Let's take a quick look at the code. The file you see now is the CRA that we made Hello React last time. And among the codes, the file you see now is the CRA that we made Hello React last time. And among the codes, we are going to look at index.js. The react-dom.render method has a function here, so it is very simple to make create element here. And let's look at the difference between the code made with JSX for a moment. Now I will erase a bit unnecessary codes here. We will explain the index.js file again as we create the component later. And the meaning of what this root is when document.getElementById is done. We will explain in detail as we create the component. First, we will create this element first. I'm going to compose a very simple screen that puts two things inside it. The code can be a little complicated, so let's subtract it as a variable and do the work. When I call react.create element under the name of title in const, so let's create const title. When I call react.create element name of title in const, I will send three parameters. One is the h1 tag, and I will give you a separate attribute, and here I'm going to put the name JSX test. And next, I'm going to make another one called const and put the name as a text and put react.create element. I'm going to give another three parameters. First will be the peak tag, and I will not give any other properties. And I'm going to put the text that will be different from the title, which will be paragraph test. So simply separate it so that I can see the difference between the title and the text. And I'm going to create another one called container, where I can put both text and title inside of it. So I'm going to put react.create element one more time. And this time I'm going to give div tag, and I'm not going to give any attribute right now. And this container is going to contain title and text. But since there are two of them, we are not going to put it this way. We are going to put them together as an array like this. And since there are more than one, we have to put it all together as an array. So let's say there's another call test and create react.create element p null and test. Then you can add it here as a test like this. So right now we're going to put the container inside the React DOM.render. The React.strict mode tag in here is a component at this time, but we will remove it right now and then I will explain about it later. So instead of this, we are going to put container that we just created and then save it. And after that, when we look at the page, it will show the title that we made it with the h1 tag is showing it. And you can see the peak tag below it, the paragraph part. And you cannot see it really well, but it is covered with it is contained with the div class. So this is how it will be formed and look at it when it is saved and created an element with React.create element. Then as you can see now, there will be a number of variables that compose the screen with create element. If you do not write this title code in here will go inside in here. So it will be keep on repeating same code in the several places. So it will be bothering you a lot. So I'm going to put it back. And then in this way, when we actually create the complex screen, it will be really difficult to compose the code itself. So if we change this part to the JSX syntax, it will change as follows. So let's remove the container. So first we will put div, and then next we'll put the title, which has h1, and then put the JSX text, and second there will be a text which is the p tag, and we are going to add paragraph test. After this, and there is no other property, and put it in the same way as JSX text. And then now if you put it like this, I will comment this out for now since we are not using it, and then I save it. And when I refresh it, it looks exactly same as what I did it in the create element. You can see the same result, but if you look at what is easier and readability or easy to write, you will know it right away. So in the future, when we use React to create these components and create elements, you should be aware that this JSX syntax is absolutely necessary. If you want to use JavaScript code in JSX grammar like this, put braces like this and write JavaScript related code. Put the braces and let's say title, and then just put title. So it will be recognize it, and you can, if you save it, if it's refreshed, you can see the 2JSX text in the web page. You only need to know about this part later when we create a React component. The ways to specify that component are the code we will continue to practice in the future. So I will explain it one more time when we actually encounter that code. This lecture ends here. Next time, we will look at how actually create a React component, starting with the React components props. I will finish this lecture here. Thank you so much, and I hope it will help you understand about the JSX. Thank you. Bye.